50 million genetic records are currently sitting in corporate clouds, held by the world's two leading commercial ancestry firms. Meanwhile, the Bureau, the very group that solved cold cases from the 1970s, stuff that happened before many of you were even around, is legally empowered to force those firms to hand over data. We aren't talking about simple contact info, but deep biological signatures, a literal blueprint of a human being's core identity. Consider the Golden State Killer, a nightmare who dodged the law for over 40 years after slaying at least 13 victims. He was responsible for more than 50 instances of sexual violence. His reign of terror spanned 2 California regions over 2 decades, while police sat on the proof for 40 years. Forensic samples existed from the scenes, but they were useless since no matches popped up in any system until the rise of genetic ancestry tools. Detectives fed the evidence into a public genealogy site, spotted some distant family connections, traced the lineage, and eventually pinpointed an ex-cop by the name of Joseph James D'Angelo. Captured in 2018, he confessed to 13 counts of first-degree murder. He passed away behind bars in 2024, closing a case everyone thought was dead. That tech was the key. Fast forward to 2026 in Tucson, Arizona, regarding Nancy Guthrie's vanishing, an 84-year-old lady, the mother of a famous TV star, gone since February despite DNA clues being found from inside her residence and federal agents leading the hunt. The whole town is wondering why, with 50 million searchable profiles and the full weight of federal law already in place, we still don't have a suspect's name. CeCe Moore just weighed in, and her take isn't what anyone was bracing for. Stick with us, because we know you guys hate it when theories outpace the actual facts. Every claim we're making is backed by a source. Moore gave an official statement to TMZ. Her technical breakdown aligns perfectly with established forensic genomic science. Whenever we pivot to our own conclusions, we'll make that distinction clear. If it's presented as a fact here, there's a record of it. Theories are called theories. Single-source claims are credited right where they belong. That's been our standard since our very first upload, and we aren't changing now. We are tracking a live federal probe. What you're watching is verified journalism and transparent analysis, not a legal indictment. The mechanics of genetic tracing. Before diving into Moore's specific words and their impact on Nancy's case, you have to grasp the science, because the hurdle she mentioned only makes sense if you know the requirements. For those of you who have been around for a while, you know we never skip the hard science when the science is what matters. And in this instance, it's the only thing that matters. The saga of forensic evidence and criminal. Profiling is essentially a timeline of high-tech tools hitting very specific roadblocks. With every breakthrough in ability, the possibilities shifted, forcing investigators to adapt their strategies. We have reached another one of those critical moments in this specific case. The requirements for investigative genealogy differ greatly from what old-school forensic testing needs. That distinction is massive, and CeCe Moore explained it for a specific reason. Most fans of true crime are familiar with CODIS, the FBI's main DNA database. When lab techs analyze evidence from a crime scene, they build an STR profile to track specific genetic markers. Those data points go right into the CODIS system. It hunts for a hit among people with prior convictions or arrests where DNA was logged by the state. CODIS is incredibly effective. It solved millions of cases since the 1990s, but it has one major flaw. If the perp has never been booked or processed or faced a conviction, the system has zero data to compare against. That suspect is basically a ghost. Perfect evidence won't matter if they aren't already in the database. They simply don't exist there. Genealogy tech flipped the script to solve this. It stops looking for a direct hit and asks a totally different question. Can we find anyone even distantly related to this sample? Since we inherit DNA from parents and siblings, or children, and even distant cousins, a list of strangers sharing an ancestor becomes a trail leading right to the suspect. But there is one catch. Genealogy research doesn't use those STR profiles. You need SNP data, focusing on single nucleotide polymorphisms. They call it a SNP. Lab work scans hundreds of thousands of genomic spots. These are areas where individual DNA letters vary from one person to another. It is the exact same. Data Ancestry or 23andMe uses from those spit kits. That info drives their family matching and heritage reports. To use these tools, cops need a SNP profile from the crime scene. That data gets uploaded for comparison. The tech finds partial links, flagging anyone with enough shared DNA to be a relative. Once those links appear, an expert builds a family tree to track down the mystery person. This method is proven and has cracked hundreds of cold cases. They are trying it with Nancy Guthrie's case right now. However, a specific obstacle is standing in the way. It involves C.C. Moore and her expertise. She is no outsider. She practically invented this entire industry. Moore leads the genealogy team at Parabon Nanolabs, the firm that first brought this technology to the police. Way before Parabon, she spent a decade as an independent researcher during the dawn of retail genomics, analyzing how such archives might expose hidden kinship ties. Far ahead of most detectives, she grasped that the sudden surge in public DNA profiling, countless every day, individuals freely sharing biological data to find roots, birthed a revolutionary method for criminal inquiry. She teamed up with police departments to apply these records toward unsolved mysteries, a mission she continues today. When her interview with TMZ regarding the Nancy Guthrie probe aired, Moore had individually helped crack over 300 felonies through her forensic ancestry techniques. 300. This encompasses murders, rapes, and stagnant files ignored for generations, along with pinpointing deceased casualties, nameless, remains needing names, whose kin lived for ages without closure or answers. This also involves unmasking killers who assumed they escaped justice. She provides expert courtroom testimony and educates police bureaus throughout the nation. Her fingerprints are on the biggest forensic DNA breakthroughs across the land. Moore's insights into what this tech can and cannot do stem from hands-on fieldwork, zero hypothesis, no scholarly guesswork, and certainly no borrowed data from journals. She manned the computer, processed the files, constructed lineages, and witnessed 40-year-old dead ends finally vanish. She never discusses ongoing probes lightly. Thus, her TMZ remarks on technical snags in the Guthrie matter, identifying the hurdles, explicitly explaining the chemistry while outing the firm handling the task. Every word was calculated. She uttered precisely what she meant. She officially confirmed that over 50 million genomic files sit in public reaches. Federal agents possess the lawful right to subpoena Ancestry and 23. I suspect they might target those massive repositories currently off limits to forensic genealogists, even with reality that 50 million plus folks have utilized home genetic kits. The top 3 corporations forbid police from accessing their archives for such tracking. Detectives hold biological proof from the residents. Yet a complex scientific glitch prevents a full archive comparison. She called it the 50 million profiles. Consider that 50 million member pool, as its sheer magnitude is vital to grasp. Ancestry's lab, their molecular division, has gathered over 25 million individual genetic records. These consumers purchased a test, provided samples, and obtained ethnic origins plus family connections back. Prior to its money troubles, 23andMe amassed roughly 14 million files. GEDmatch, the open-source site that helped nab the Golden State Killer, holds millions more files from users seeking kin across different commercial networks. Combined, these primary services host at least 50 million records. Moore highlighted this specific figure during her TMZ talk about the New York matter. She wasn't just throwing words around. That's the sheer volume of DNA data law enforcement can legally tap into right now. Here's the catch. 50 million isn't just some big, flashy stat. Practically speaking, that's more than enough to pin anyone down. Due to the way genetics are passed along, you don't actually need everyone's records to track down nearly any citizen. Experts in the field have proven that. Once 3 to 5% of people put their profiles in the system, detectives can basically link anyone to their relatives because the network of cousins, distant kin, and extended family gets tight enough to trace almost any lineage. America holds about 330 million residents. 50 million accounts make up 15% of us, meaning we've blown way past the limit for total coverage. Provided Nancy Guthrie's kidnapper has any kin at all, maybe a brother or mother, a grown kid, or even a cousin who used Ancestry or 23andMe or similar sites, a DNA trail leads straight to them. The paperwork is set, and the laws are already in place. While C.C. Moore says the Bureau has the green light, those files remain untouched. It's a technical snag, beginning with the messy reality of DNA found at crime scenes. Here's why the feds haven't checked those records. Everyone just figured that once the FBI took over the evidence, the rest was easy. Process the samples, hit the search button, and find the guy. That wasn't the case at all. It's not about poor detective work, nor did the system glitch or the data vanish. The mistake was believing something about the biological evidence that simply isn't factual, specifically that the samples are in a format those sites can even read. C.C. Moore pinpointed exactly why that's a misconception. What they found at Nancy's place is what labs call a messy blend. It appears we're dealing with a multi-person sample, implying at least a few different people, mostly unknown, are all tangled together. This kind of overlap happens when organic. Traces from multiple sources get left on the same spot and picked up as one unit. Swabbing a table or a kitchen counter, a shirt, or a door handle that various folks have handled or leaned against means you're pulling everyone's genetic code at once. Their data is literal soup on that cotton bud. Think of every knob or armrest people touch daily. Every single bit of matter, from shed skin to spit, or blood from anyone who's been there, gets gathered up when the CSI team sweeps a house where relatives, guests, workers, or nurses have all passed through. These dirty samples are actually quite common. This is actually the standard rather than something unusual. Crime labs tackle blended DNA samples daily. Proven techniques already exist for analyzing dual profiles, like those involving a suspect and a survivor. When the genetic material from one individual clearly outweighs the other, experts can usually extract the primary signature without much trouble. Modern software can even tease apart two equal samples on occasion. However, once 3 or more individuals get thrown into the mix, or if the proportions become fuzzy, or the samples start breaking down, things get incredibly messy, fast. Overlapping biological markers clash so intensely that modern sorting programs just cannot untangle the data effectively. We call this a tangled composite. These messy samples represent the exact moment where forensic labs hit a dead end when trying to build a SNP map for family tree research. That is the vital difference here. When running basic database checks through traditional STR markers, technicians utilize sorting systems that perform quite effectively, even on tricky specimens. Traditional testing only looks at a handful of biological points, usually 20 or less, which keeps the data noise manageable. In contrast, SNP mapping scans hundreds of thousands of genomic sites all at once. With such massive data, separating different people's codes becomes a total nightmare to decode. A program that effectively unzips a dual STR sample might fail miserably when faced with a triple SNP blend. The math just does not translate across these vastly different levels. C.C. Moore verified the evidence from the residents falls into this bucket. It involves several individuals, a real forensic knot, and the verified tools needed to strip away the noise and create a searchable SNP file for family databases simply are not available yet in an authentic or court-ready version. I am certain that as we move forward, superior ways to handle these blends will emerge, which explains why the lawman mentioned a 12-month wait. You see, the tools for these tangled samples have not been invented yet. We need to dive further into the biology, as this specific hurdle defines the whole case and needs a thorough breakdown. The challenge of uncoupling a blended genetic specimen into distinct parts remains a massive hurdle in modern crime lab work. Experts have actually come a long way with standard forensic STR samples. Digital tools like Strumix and TrueAllele were built just to untangle these blends and are used globally in legal proceedings. These systems rely on likelihood calculations. They use math to predict which group of people likely created the resulting biological data to pull out specific identities from the jumble. However, straight unraveling only happens across roughly 20 biological sites. 20 points of info for each person, several subjects with clashing data. It is tough, but manageable with today's math. SNP mapping is a whole different ballgame. A basic SNP test looks at between 600,000 and 1 million separate genomic markers. These markers are scattered across all 23 sets of our chromosomes. Every spot holds a specific letter, A, T, G, or C, arranged in countless ways. If a sample contains genetic material from several individuals, those hundreds of thousands of genetic markers often show a messy blend of different people's data. A single person might be the main source at certain points, while other spots look like an even split between 2 or 3 people. Sometimes the data is so garbled it doesn't clearly point to anyone at all, creating code that can scan every single one of these markers and accurately link every bit of DNA back to the right person, while maintaining the high precision needed to ensure the final results are effective for searching family history databases remains a massive hurdle for computer science. This takes more than raw math. It demands a totally new way to model mixtures compared to standard crime lab tests. Such sheer volume of data makes the math exponentially harder for every new person added to the mix. C.C. Moore was very clear about this. It isn't about lacking money or tools. Slow computers aren't the issue here. The actual logic is what's missing. No program currently exists that can untangle a messy web of genetic markers into separate, clean identities that police can actually take to court. That's where things stand right now. Unless you have a pure genetic blueprint from just one person, basically a perfect biological ID, pulled out from all that background static. Sending crime scene samples to sites like Ancestry or 23andMe is a waste of time. Searching 50 million records with a dirty, mixed-up sample just won't work. The current platforms weren't built to handle that kind of data. Any results would be totally random. So, federal agents are forced to wait, though they aren't sitting idle. They are still chasing every other lead they have in the meantime. However, using family trees to crack the case, usually the quickest way to find a suspect, is stalled because we haven't mastered the science of separating mixed DNA. Moore's talk with TMZ didn't just focus on what's standing in the way. She closed with a bombshell that flips the entire script. She revealed that a startup named Estra is currently building a tool designed specifically to untangle these complex genetic knots. Purpose-built, not just general use. I have a hunch this new software suite might be exactly what Estra is preparing to roll out for police departments everywhere. This company is crafting an engine that can unweave tangled biological samples into distinct identities with a degree of precision that actually holds up in major investigations, which is a huge deal given the current landscape. Keep in mind that Moore's very own team at Parabon Nanolabs is widely considered the top tier of high-tech crime scene genetics in the nation. If there were already a proven way to separate these markers, her experts would have found it by now. Seeing her spotlight Estra as the key player for this breakthrough says a lot about where the science sits today. We aren't there quite yet, but it's under construction, and she verified that they are rushing the process. That phrasing is key. Being fast-tracked means moving way faster than any typical lab project. Basically, the engineering timeline is on extreme overdrive. All assets, the team, server power, and everything else is rushing Nancy Guthrie's case. Take a second to process that. Right now, a firm is coding the bridge between police and Guthrie's suspect. This isn't a distant project 5 years away. Moore calls it a high-priority rush, happening now under a super-tight deadline. Then she went even further. She told TMZ that once police pull clean SNP DNA from Nancy's home using Estra's new tech, another way to unmix samples, or just finding simpler genetic evidence. She's sure it'll be solved in weeks, maybe even days. She says if they get a solid profile, genealogy experts will definitely crack it in weeks. That's because the FBI's specialist unit is ready. Databases with 50 million records are legally ready. Legal warrant systems are fully operational. Ancestry mapping, that deep research Moore's team excels at, starts once a profile arrives. The path from SNP hit to a name is open. We're just missing the profile. The team building that profile's key is rushing it for this case, separating facts from assumptions. Let's be specific about what Moore confirmed versus what she didn't. This community relies on hard facts, not guessing. Officially confirmed by Moore. DNA was definitely found inside Nancy Guthrie's home. That material is a highly complicated mixture. Current tech can't accurately untangle messy SNP blends yet. A firm called Estra is rushing software for this problem. Once they land a single-person SNP profile, Moore thinks a name will surface within weeks. As for what isn't confirmed, we don't know how many people's DNA is mixed in. We don't know if detectives identified any contributors using other clues. STR testing, for instance, might work for CODI's hits without genealogy. The launch date for Estra's software remains unknown. We don't know if police have hired Estra yet. We don't know if video or phone records, money logs, or tips have pushed the investigation through separate channels. Looking at it objectively, how precise CC Moore was tells us a lot on its own. She skipped the broad talk regarding where DNA science stands today. Her focus stayed on this file, highlighting the exact tech hurdle in their way. She actually pointed out which firm is trying to fix the issue. Sharing such particulars during a live federal probe isn't just some random slip-up. As a pro, CC knows exactly how the law and police work intersect. Whatever she decided to voice openly was a conscious move to get those facts out there. We should also pay attention to her silences. She never claimed things were stuck or that cops hit a brick wall. She didn't frame the evidence as junk or suggest the hunt was cooling off. Each word she spoke suggested a clear hitch with a fix currently being built. Presenting it as a fixable glitch instead of a total roadblock carries weight when it is backed by her reputation in this niche industry. One way to see it? She is making sure people keep talking about this file. Looking at it differently, she is documenting exactly where the tech side of the search sits right now. Both views fit the reality without forcing us to guess her true motives. Tying the clues together. If you have been watching our videos since February, this news links back to topics we have covered many times before. Stuff found at the suspect's house has been the main story from day one. Experts flagged certain spots in the residence as crucial for the lab guys. Genetic material was found. Yet the mystery has always been what they did with it afterward. What results did the lab actually pull from those samples? How come there has been zero word on any breakthroughs with the DNA? That void, the quiet period after collection and before any updates, is the biggest mystery here. CC's talk finally plugs that hole with a very tech-heavy explanation. They gathered the samples and ran the tests. The sample is a messy blend that today's tools cannot untangle for family tracing. This is not a case of detectives being lazy or dropping the ball. It is the very peak of lab tech hitting a wall that no one has managed to climb just yet. This matches the way the feds have stayed quiet about various aspects, like the deal with that other security video, or the lack of any real updates regarding the physical clues. How federal agents act when they are working hard but staying tight-lipped on genetics that current machines simply cannot make sense of yet. Police have plenty of good excuses for not saying a word to the press. Being quiet does not mean they are idle. It usually means they are planning. Once that tech hurdle is identified, and the fix is being worked on right now, detectives are likely keeping a lid on things to avoid tipping off anyone who knows something about the case while they hold out for a new tech breakthrough. That timeline for the pacemaker records, that gap in the front door footage, checking out the guys on the construction crew, the idea that someone used the rear entrance to set the scene, that empty house next door. Every single one of these leads is still being chased, and they are just as vital as the genetic evidence. A massive case with this many layers never hangs on just one piece of proof. Yet the route through ancestral DNA, once it is ready to go, might be the quickest way to put a name to a face. Linking a crime scene sample straight to a person's name, sifted through 50 million records, and handled by the top-tier experts in the field of family trees and forensics. Police are not about to walk away from a lead like that. They are keeping that card close to their chest until the tech catches up, and that time might be coming very soon. Now, let us talk about the ethics of it all. You cannot discuss using family DNA in police work without hitting on a major controversy. It would be a disservice to the story if we did not tackle this head-on. These DNA websites were not actually designed for catching criminals. They were started for folks looking to trace their roots, find distant cousins, or see what health risks they might have inherited. Back when users mailed their swabs to sites like Ancestry or 23andMe, they were simply choosing to share their own biological data with a business for private reasons. The thought that their personal upload might one day help pin a crime on a family member, perhaps even a relative they have never actually spoken to, pushes the boundaries of what they originally signed up for. This battle over law and morality is still raging today. Following the capture of the Golden State Killer, the site GED Match completely overhauled their fine print. Now, police can only access data if the person who shared their DNA specifically gave the green light for official use. That change happened because people were worried about their secrets being out. It makes the pool of suspects smaller, but it ensures everyone is there by choice. Companies like Ancestry and 23andMe have gone a different route. They have both made it clear they will not hand over anything to the cops without a judge's signature. But if a warrant shows up, the rules change. A company's policy cannot beat a direct order from a federal judge. Experts like C.C. Moore have noted that the FBI absolutely can, and frequently does, use legal tools to force access. Once the paperwork is served, the floodgates open. The fact that 23andMe is currently going broke has legal experts and activists on high alert. If a business goes under like that, everything they know about you, including those millions of DNA samples, is essentially just another item for sale to the highest bidder. The judge in the 23andMe case is being pressured to set strict rules on where that data goes next. Whatever happens, that courtroom is going to set the standard for genetic privacy for a long time. But none of those legal battles change the cold facts of the New York investigation. Whether they can legally get into those databases is actually a minor point right now, simply because they do not have a clean enough sample to run a search anyway. You can't separate the privacy debate from this narrative. They are totally intertwined. The identical tech that might reveal who took Nancy Guthrie is exactly what allows police to track down the relatives of any person in a DNA database. These two realities are happening at the same time. Why go to TMZ? Moore chose one of the planet's biggest celebrity and gossip machines. This wasn't some boring science journal. It wasn't a police manual or a college lecture. That move is worth a closer look. Nancy's case went viral mainly because her family has serious TV fame. The folks watching this are the same ones obsessed with TMZ's world. Her decision to use that platform and get so technical shows she knew exactly who her audience was and what message she was sending. She could have just kept things vague. She could have admitted she was helping without sharing the dirty details. She could have said the FBI is handling it and left it at that. Instead, she pinpointed the exact technical wall they hit. She named the firm fixing it and gave a few-week window for the result. That's a world away from a polite no comment. Veteran investigators follow a clear pattern when they talk to the public about live files. When they get this specific and volunteer info they didn't have to share, there's usually a motive. Maybe it's to keep the heat on a case that's cooling off. Maybe it's to create a public timestamp of where they are right now. Or perhaps she's dropping hints to people who know something they aren't telling. Or letting other cops know that the finish line is finally in sight. The end is close, and they are moving fast. We don't know for sure what pushed Moore to talk, or if it was all of the above. What is obvious is that she overshared on purpose with total precision. The data, the law, the DNA hurdle, the firm, and the countdown. Every single one of those points was a strategic call. In a high-stakes federal probe, what gets said and where it's said is carefully weighed by pros. Being that precise was the message itself. Nancy Guthrie vanished in February 2026. She's 84. She's a mom. Her empty seat is felt by her kids and by millions of strangers who have been glued to this for months. Between the high-profile family and the weird way she just disappeared, and how the cops go from loud to silent, a unique online posse has formed. They are logging clues, and they remember every word from 3 months ago and checking it against the current narrative, spotting the contradictions, piecing together a group perspective that one lone reporter could never build solo. This level of constant focus is hard to come by, and its effect reaches far past a simple thread of replies. When detectives realize millions are tracking their moves and every statement is under the microscope, when every slip-up is being recorded. When a crowd is big and loud enough to apply actual heat on the authorities and agencies tasked with solving the mystery, the entire flow of the probe changes. Taking responsibility gets real, and ignoring the case becomes much riskier. The demand for manpower remains high even as years roll by. Cold cases usually vanish from the headlines once the initial hype dies down. Stories that remain visible get better results. Linking public noise to actual breakthroughs is not just hearsay. Decades of records prove this to be true. You are that force. The people watching, the ones in the comments, following every update, spreading the word everywhere. This is not just static. It is a factor the police must consider. It ensures Nancy Guthrie stays on the radar of those with the power to find her. Using DNA, heritage is just one lead. It might be the strongest tool we have once the tech finally catches up. Still, it is not the only way forward. The probe is moving on several fronts, and your job is to stay curious, keep weighing the known facts, and keep the fire lit under the offices that owe us the truth. Next steps, particularly regarding digital data, hinge on things we are currently monitoring. Is there news on the SDRAW software? Has the Bureau shifted its stance on the matter? Do local or federal agents suggest the lab work is entering a fresh stage? Any shifts in 23andMe privacy rules affecting police access? We are staying put to witness it all, waiting for that one detail that flips the script. Since tough cases rarely crack for just one reason, there are more leads to follow here. Other paths have always existed. We hit the DNA hard today because C.C. Moore provided a very clear look at the current status. The door is ajar. New tech is coming. If Moore is correct, which she is, we might be talking weeks once the tools go live. We're keeping watch. Just one last point before we wrap this up. Files like Nancy Guthrie's disappearance strain every agency involved. It hits the detectives working with fragments of clues at the bleeding edge of science. It tests the reporters and experts trying to stay factual in real time without jumping to conclusions. And it tests groups like yours, keeping the flame alive while avoiding unfair blame. Moore's words show how a person inside this probe handles such intense scrutiny. She deals with the weight by distinguishing facts from uncertainty with total clarity, admitting to obstacles while finding paths forward without making unrealistic promises. Our channel follows that exact standard. We log evidence, we tag analysis, we separate what Moore stated from our own views on its impact. Nancy Guthrie must be found. Her family needs real closure, and this group helps keep that drive alive. This clip details a current federal search for a missing individual. Every claim stated as fact is sourced to named witnesses or major reporting and noted. Details from one person are credited to that specific source, logical deductions, and our take on public records are labeled as theory, not verified truth. We have not named or implied that anyone is a suspect here. Nothing within this video works as a legal claim against any person involved. Should you have any info on Nancy Guthrie's case, call the Pima County Sheriff or the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Tucson. Official contact links are in the text box below. To get recent and official data on this case, check with Pima County Law Enforcement or Federal Bureau of Investigation statements. After months of relentless searching, the truth still feels just out of reach, but closer than ever before. Investigators have uncovered new leads, re-examined old evidence, and followed every possible trail, refusing to let this case fade into silence. Each discovery brings a mix of hope and heartbreak as unanswered questions continue to linger. Those who care deeply about this case are not giving up. They're pushing forward, demanding clarity, demanding justice. And while the full story hasn't been revealed yet, one thing is certain. The search is far from over, and the truth is still waiting to be found.